want to become an actor? I know I would, but can't. I'm the wrong size, and my English accent sounds more alien than Klingon or Elvish. Most of you are of course too ugly, and you can't emote. Being an actor is something where we all know that the idea is better than reality. A way better way to put the question is, would you like to be a character in a big movie? Yes, that sounds more fitting. I guess this will work just the same if I'm talking about someone who's already got that breakthrough. Let's say you have been in a major motion picture. Can you keep your hot streak going? What if a stunt goes wrong? What if a family tragedy forces you to stay at home with the kids? What if you age like a bucket full of shrimp? What if you happen to get casted in a movie that's so bad and so memorable that no one wants to see you anymore regardless of your talent? What if you're Steve Guttenberg? The Congress starts at a point where all these problems are seemingly solved. Robin Wright, played by Robin Wright, is offered an opportunity to sell herself, her likeness, to a fictional studio called Miramount. For this, her body, face, emotions, movements, her whole essence would be scanned and replicated. Then the studio could be able to use her prime self in as many projects as they want for the next 20 years. Robin then only needs to sit at home and collect checks while promising that she doesn't make any public appearances and by the default not act anymore. Movies will keep coming, even if Robin dies a week after signing the contract. This is presented in a way that's sci-fi-ish, but not really. The Congress came out in 2013. 2016 was the year when Peter Cushing was resurrected with CGI to perform in his role as Grand Moff Tarkin, despite being 2 decades dead. Now we are seeing Disney buying rights to older movies with younger versions of their current actors, so they can use those young faces in their future projects. It's in fact so common already that the only reason I heard about it was the fact that they didn't need to do that for Paul Rudd, because he forgot to age for the last 30 years. Otherwise, it's already the norm. Sometimes it makes sense more than not doing that. When we saw young Robert Downey Jr. in Civil War, it felt pretty natural that he would have sold his entire essence to be used by Marvel as they see fit. He gave Marvel a decade of his life, and for it, he was buried in enough money to build his own helicarrier, but a better one with blackjack and hookers. But all the others too? Now it came to my attention that the kids in It Chapter 2 were de-aged in post-production. Sure, teenagers are notoriously bad at staying the exact same appearance for years between shoots. But those kids, in the beginning of their future acting careers, have already been twisted in the mold to better suit our eyes before they finish their puberty. So I'd say we have reached the future of the Congress. Now we can ask the only relevant question. Who owns the actor? The Congress shows its own version of the ultimate losing of oneself. We see this in a reasonably grounded scene where we see Robin watch herself giving an interview that she never gave, as the whole concept of Robin Wright is now owned by the studio.
Yeah, I do. I mean, you know, I find something new in this character, Agent Robin, every time I do it. Like now, in the Street Fighters production, you know, the robots that come from the gutters, they're so much a part of our lives. They're close to us. Because people buy household robots and they basically just suck the blood out of them and then they just use them up and they expire. And the poor robots, you know, they used to have rehab centers for them and now they use them as scrap. It's so sad. And I don't know, people call RRR sci-fi, but I just say it's not, it's documentary.
Is the Miramount studio evil and soulless?
Do you know how many people read Lord of the Rings? 1,000th of a single percent of the people that went to see the movie read the book. And you want to know why? Because it's one hell of a complicated read. That's why. It's a nightmare to get through. It's boring.
Did you read it before you made the movie?
Are you kidding? But I saw the movie, and that's why we make movies.
They cast Danny Huston as the boss, so does the Pope shit in the woods. After this, the movie goes out of its way to follow the plot of The Futurological Congress, a novel by Stanislav Lem. That's pretty much a stream of consciousness where the plot is reinvented after every sentence. It's a parody of communist totalitarianism that questions the individuality of self, the impossibility of free will, and what is real if everyone hallucinates the same thing. Like if being John Malkovich was eaten by Naked Lunch and then got reenacted like Terry Gilliam's sketches from Monty Python's Flying Circus. My point is that it doesn't really help us. It also makes this easier to edit since I don't have to keep thinking what I can actually show, since this movie has more phallic imagery than Caligula. Therefore, we shall return to real world. Let's take these fine women as our example. Jessica Chastain and Dallas Bryce Howard are two actresses that allegedly look similar. I never subscribed to this idea until I asked myself, is Elton John's mom Dallas Bryce Howard? Then I slapped myself. I'm watching Rocketman. It's a good movie, so it has to be Jessica Chastain. Dallas Bryce Howard only acts in movies that are awful. Jessica Chastain usually finds herself in the good ones. I'm not saying anything about the talent of either one, just how their legacies end up being built by the sheer luck of which hired the right agent. Countless times yours and mine favorite screen presences have done movies they hated for money. Here's just one example. A quote from Michael Caine. Someone said, "Have you ever seen Jaws 4? I said, "No, but I've seen the house it bought for my mom. It's fantastic." This is considered a norm for a working actor. I'll now quote Johnny Depp from memory. When he was asked why he still makes these pirate movies he obviously hates, since he should have made enough of a fortune to just retire. Because the brand or the enterprise that is Johnny Depp employs about 60 people now, and all these people would be unemployed if I just quit. Okay then, it seems that sometimes you can't get big enough to just quit. Let's just jump into the alternative timeline where actors are just scanned and their likeness is sold to a studio. Would this be a better place? I'm now running with the idea that a contract with the studio makes your physical involvement in a project non-mandatory. You could still act in a movie if you really wanted, if not, the movie would be made just with a fake you. It's the way that makes most sense. There are instances where we appreciate the end result because we know it was real. No one would care about Jackie Chan's career if we didn't know about the 100 broken bones he endured along the way. Now let's think of a movie that went through a development hell. Now, none of these actors actually need to be here. We would have a Batman who wouldn't want to escape the whole series. In fact, we could just use younger Michael Keaton. It wouldn't matter if your action icon inconveniently gets pregnant. Flash could be played by someone who you don't want to stab every time he opens his mouth, since any one of the hundreds of actors signed to Warner Brothers could be here because no one is busy shooting something else. Superman could easily be played by someone who looked like Rasputin in real life during shooting. Would this make it a good movie? No. But it wouldn't be a punchline with a $300 million price tag. Hey, I made up a dumber example. What if you want your movie's biggest star to play his role straight, but he doesn't give a flying fuck? What if that star appears to the shoot morbidly obese, wants to paint himself all white, wear a bucket of ice on his head, and demands that he must always appear with a midget that's dressed as him? Yeah, Marlon Brando was having a blast during the filming of Island of Dr. Moreau. But that's something I really don't want to fix. Just because it resulted to my favorite filmmaking documentary of all time, I'm trying to come up with some cons to balance the pros of this idea. Tears in Rain. This is one of my favorite scenes in all of cinema, and it was improvised, something Rutger Hauer came up with right before they shot the scene. No real actor, nor legendary monologue that makes Blade Runner worth remembering. In the novel, there was no monologue. The original script was probably something like the following.
I went to the future. I've seen how the world ends. Yeah, it was neat. See you there soon.
And no matter how much data you have, you might not be able to replicate something like this.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space!
And yet, all of these iconic performances would likely still exist if the Congress procedure was implemented with that 90% accuracy that I explained earlier. 10-year deal, movies with you will be made. You don't have to be there, but you can if you want to. Performances we would really end up missing would be those like a small price. Now, let's look at the procedure that Robin goes through in the Congress. This Thunderdome will capture everything she can show that's then owned by the studio to use as they will. She has doubts, but Harvey Keitel, who is our stand-in for Kevin Feige, tells her a story. A story powerful enough that Robin goes through every emotion the studio would ever want to use.
Robin, did I ever tell you how I got into this business? Can you believe I've been in this business since I was 10 years old, a fifth grader? By age 13, I was agenting for all the losers, the cripples, the midgets, and the fire-breathing hunchbacks of the Bronx. Within 2 years, we were the richest family on the block. And that's how I met you. And you were perfect for me. As lovely as an angel, and with the worst defect an actress can have. Fear. Terror that stands in the way of every desire. Panic attacks before every critical meeting. Paralysis when faced with truly great roles. I was the inner demon that lived off your fears and made a living off your weakness. I'm not your agent, I just love you. This is your last performance.
No matter how much bad jokes I have told thus far, this is the most sincere moment there can be, because it's not acting. Any acting she would do after this wouldn't be as honest and as powerful as what she just delivered as a package of data to a random server. In an interview about the movie, that means real life, Robin Wright tells us how her features are already in a hard drive somewhere if Roger Zemeckis ever wants to reuse them. That's because she was in Beowulf. If you look at this picture, tilt your head slightly, close your eyes and leave the room, you may notice that's not really her. The fact that we haven't yet completely climbed up the other side of the uncanny valley isn't the point. It's that the Thunderdome scanning would just make what already is more official, more honest. Actors never arriving to the shooting of a movie they are starring in sounds more fair and straightforward than forcing Johnny Depp to return for the fourth sequel of Pirates of Diminishing Returns, Revenge of the Five-Picture Deal. The Congress might deliver its opinion as being opposite of mine, but that's just the inevitable result of following the source material. The Futurological Congress is a satire about totalitarianism of the Soviet tyranny and about losing your identity in the cogs of the machine. Making of the Congress started as an adaptation of said book. The acting part is something Ari Folman came up with later. So even if it frames the end result as diabolical and soulless, I don't think even the director considers his own argument sound. What I've been trying to say is that digitalization and killing the actor as a concept it has held since the beginning of film isn't a bad thing. As it is happening now, it's not because of corporate greed or some obsession to eternal youth. It's because it's the only smart thing to do. There's only one true question left. Should we let the whole concept of a cinema icon just die? Well, yes, at least partially. That's something that we've been gradually heading towards since IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes came to be relevant, though the seeds might have been planted when VHS became a thing. I'll try to make this as short as possible since there are like a million examples. Remember when the first trailer of Guardians of the Galaxy came out? Many of you went to see it because Marvel meant quality. Others went to see it because it was a James Gunn movie. Many trailers try to grab your attention, saying Chris Pratt action movie or Zoe Saldana Dave Bautista sci-fi movie. The film industry has been slowly getting aboard the idea that the masses don't really choose their cinematic experiences based on who stars in it. Big name stars were a thing that made sense before our information age, when quality of movies traveled by word of mouth. To capture everyone's attention, you needed a face for your movie, that household name that everyone recognized. Then came the era of the VHS. A theatrical opening was no longer required for a film to find its audience. We found filmmakers who created enjoyable experiences that found their audiences without the grand premiere or big name. Today, when a trailer falls, we are one click away from discovering that said movie is written by someone who has written nothing but garbage thus far. The next click tells us that, let's use that earlier example, this thing was shot and reshot again and test audiences were never satisfied to the end result. So, since this is a well-established franchise, those test screenings might represent my reaction accurately. Better ask a critic I trust. That review is one click away too.
It's like fork in the brain. Fork in the brain.
The Dark Universe found it out the hard way, when Warner Brothers thought that Tom Cruise's name was enough to bring people to cinemas. By the way, he's in the Congress too. Not the real Tom, but this Maverick is voiced by a guy whose whole filmography is made of Tom Cruise impersonations. I don't think they bought the rights to Tom Cruise's likeness. Nick Cage has to be a favorite actor of countless people. And there are so many reasons to love the guy. But I don't think there's a single person on this planet that has watched his every movie just because he's in them. That includes Cage himself. The man has been pushing out garbage with the pace that's more suitable for a porn star. From what I've gathered, he has been basically forced to take any role that's offered for him because he managed to create a crippling amount of debt. Therefore, let's get back to that interview I mentioned.
Having a watch it, yeah.
I think so.
Robin, your character has to kind of sign away her life really in some ways and says that she won't act again. How would that feel to you if you were kind of had to sign that away and you were never allowed to perform again?
It's such a hypothetical. I mean, sitting here today, I can't imagine not doing this job that I love so dearly. That's hype. I don't know.
Yeah, ask that from Cage. Maybe then we might have 20 Mandy caliber movies among all the crap he never wanted to do and I will never watch. By the way, this movie came out before Birdman. Wouldn't it be easy to imagine that being Michael Keaton instead of Robin Wright? This future will open acting careers for many individuals who wouldn't be able to actually do multiple movies. It's not just the aging. Here's a picture of me looking smart. And here's a picture of me after drinking that one glass. Now those pictures are like 5 and 6 years old, but that wouldn't really matter, as it would be enough for me to be scanned once. Then my body could be used for, let's say, a role that was written for someone who's shorter than LeBron James. While I could be at home spending the money of that sweet contract to buy nothing but hats. It wasn't a coincidence that I used that Tim Curry clip earlier. Wouldn't it be great if he was still doing other things than just voice work even after the stroke? Yes, says literally everyone.
I must have victory. I am the premier. This is my timeline.
And what a fine timeline it is. I'm currently watching Eternal Paprika of Slaughterhouse Darkly, or Undone for short. At the moment I'm still very interested. It stars Rosa Salazar. Before this, she starred as a title character in Alita Battle Angel earlier this year, a movie that costs about $100 trillion. We can safely say she has made it big. If I'll ever meet her, I will likely start telling her how I'm a huge fan and how I love her work. Someone would just have to introduce us, because I don't think I would actually recognize her, even if I was talking to her face to face. And you know what? I'm kind of fine with that. I will never claim that Final Fantasy The Spirits Within was a good idea. Not in any timeline. But I will say that Simone was hilarious, underrated, and ahead of its time. Is there a good way to end this thing? What do you think? Have I made any sense to you? Or are you one of those people who only goes to movies once a year and only base your decisions on trailers? And that one time you were completely sold was when you finally saw a trailer that said Chadwick Boseman's sci-fi movie. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.